Hey there, everybody. I hope you are doing well. Welcome back to the channel. I know I got on yesterday, which is unusual. Typically, my political recordings are Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So I'm staying on schedule today, yesterday, because of everything that happened around Charlie Kirk. And I also do want to apologize. It was in my spirit, but it didn't make it out of my mouth yesterday to acknowledge the shooting in Colorado at the school there. And we know, as many of you pointed out in the comments, rightfully so, we did not see, where was the coverage around that, right? Where was the outpouring of sympathy and, our what has become, unfortunately, our standard, thoughts and prayers. But I should have also acknowledged that, and I'm sorry that I did not. All right, so I am taping this midday Friday, a little later than I typically tape because I had a feeling something was niggling me last night that Patel was under, Patel and the whole FBI, everybody was under so much pressure. Didn't know whether they were going to come up with the real person who shot Charlie Kirk, or whether they were just going to find somebody. It would appear, now we're hearing, all of you by now have heard, Tyler Robinson, this 22-year-old young man out of, I guess, from Utah, lived about 3 hours away, we're being told, from where the shooting, where he shot Charlie Kirk. Now, I'm not being led. I know a lot of us are, people are there's a lot of questions about, was this orchestrated? Was the shooter, now we know it's Tyler Robinson, was he paid, etc. We're getting some different information that's coming out, but here's what really is stirring my spirit, and I want to go and explore this with you all today. I'm getting, a tipping point. I kept hearing from Spirit, a tipping point. And we've been saying that for a while. Like, how much of this turmoil and chaos and vitriol can we continue to take before something just snaps, right? I am wondering if we are, in fact, what I'm hearing is like headed for another civil rights movement, or a different type of civil rights movement that is both social and cultural and political. I think Spirit was reminding me, my guides were reminding me, ancestors have been like, chit, 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 that so much of what is happening, it keeps being put in a framework of politicizing everything, right? And yes, the political affects the social, affects the economic, affects the spiritual, but still everything being put in this box. Can the Dems get their SHIT together enough to really combat this? Can, what are we going to do? Do we need more progressive leaders? All of the things that you all are certainly very well aware of. But what I was hearing today is, remember, Charlie Kirk and his whole, the whole Turning Point organization, this whole, amassing these young people and bringing them into that movement, and extremist Christian nationalist views, that on the left side, if we're going to go ahead and call it that, I'm almost like Spirit is saying, watch those labels of Fefe, but you get my drift there. So where's the countermeasure to that? And the civil rights movement certainly would never have been what it was had it not had such a strong foundation of faith, and many faiths, not just Christian, but Christian, Jewish, you name it. That there were so many people from all sorts of, walks of life, but that there was this commonality of a sense of being driven by their faith, being driven by the idea of a higher ideal that had a spiritual foundation. And that, I don't know that we have seen, you all. We have certainly, the guides have been saying, look at how, even, as disgusting as it may be to listen to Trump and others, tout all of this, Mike Johnson et al., tout all of this Christian God faith, stuff. But to what extent? It's almost as if, I don't want to call it avoidance on the left, but where is the counterbalance? And I wonder if part of what is going to come out of this, I'm going to go to Spirit, is that we are going to hear the somehow the the Christian movement beginning to assert itself from a more liberal, social, democratic, you know, faith-based perspective. And I am not, before anybody gets on here, you know, I recognize and I respect wherever people are, even, you know, whether you're agnostic or atheist, even, that's fine. I'm not pushing in that direction. I am simply, my guides are saying there has to be something that captures tipping point. There has to be something that captures or recaptures a large portion of Christians who have gone too far into extremism and are recognizing, because of all the things that could have happened, and identifying Charlie Kirk's killer. Look what we have, right? And again, I recognize all the question marks around that. You know, is this true? Is this even true? I do want to look at Tyler Robinson, you all, of these so-called shell casings that were engraved. Lots of question marks around that too, right? But I heard this morning that one of them did make a reference to being gay. Not that necessarily he was gay, Tyler Robinson, but that you know, the notion of fascism and stopping the hatred. We're hearing that Tyler Robinson had been more vocal among friends and family around his you know, his feelings around Charlie Kirk and Turning Point, and spreading white supremacy and spreading messages of hate. As many people who are across the board expressing their disgust with this assassination, the fact that, you know, Kirk said what he said and he did what he did and he stood for what he stood for can't be erased. All right, we don't even have to go into that. We understand one another on that issue. I want to see first, Spirit, did Tyler Robinson go after Charlie Kirk because of his perhaps preference, his identity? And I'll leave it at that. You know what I'm talking about. All right, we have, all right, I can't ignore it because at the bottom of the deck, whoa, I never ignore. If I shuffle and at the bottom of the deck I see majors, I pay attention. 3 majors just came after I shuffled at the bottom of the deck. The first one is Temperance. I'm looking at his identity, Tyler Robinson's identity. There's a shift there. And perhaps it was a shift that he was already feeling. Again, I don't want to get into his business in terms of his actual preference, but I am getting with Temperance, there can be a polarity that feels at odds. So when I'm looking at identity, you know, male, female, masculine, feminine traits, the right to choose, or the sense of being perhaps non-binary, etc. That is really pinging there with the Tower that also came. Again, these are 3 cards that came at the bottom of the deck. So you've got a Tower. There was something within Robinson that broke, and we understand that he had been, you know, feeling this way and expressing some views. Not just recently, this has been something ongoing with him. So there's a Tower. It's almost like he reached a breaking point. And that 3rd major arcana, you all, is the Hangman, ruled by Neptune. Very much where things, on a personal level, it's where things can get, like, literally get flipped over flipped over. So this taken together, I think Tyler Robinson had a breakthrough or a breakdown or a breakage of some sort around his identity, and the fact that with someone like a Charlie Kirk, and of course millions of followers, right, and growing, that he felt that it was so that he felt a sense of attack. Remember, this is someone in Utah, and we know Utah. We know, you know, that, you know, extremely conservative culture by and large, right? And I hate to, you know, stereotype everybody, but we get it. So that had a lot to do with where his head was, and the fact that apparently he was having some sort of crises of his own I don't even feel like this is anger so much. Spirit, please show me more about Tyler Robinson. His essence, his mindset, his fourth major arcana. I have only pulled 4 cards and they're all coming super high, you all. Death. He had very, very personal reasons for doing this. This was not just about going after Kirk and over the vitriol and the white supremacist ideals that Kirk espoused. It was really saying there was something personal here, and I really do feel getting all 4 of these major arcana again: Tower, Hangman. Started out with that Temperance card, that I am both this and that, and how do I blend those things, and then saying the only way out is here, right? So for those of us, or those of you who are still some question marks around, did he really do it? Again, I'm being led. We have to be careful these days, and certainly please say your prayers around me and other content creators who are in this realm. It is not the easiest time to do that, and we have to be careful. At the same time, I feel like we have a responsibility. I certainly feel a responsibility to continue to show up and not back down and speak truth as I see it. So interesting that Robinson definitely was having his own internal crises that turned into, and because Spirit is saying don't skip over and stress, because he was in Utah, because he was overwhelmingly surrounded by a different sentiment, a different go along to get along, a different, if the whole Scientology thing even, right? If you want to be one of us, you got to be one of us. And he was not one of them. So, wow. All right. That. The other thing that I got, and bear with me on this one, you all. We're going to take a little bit of a curve, but I value your input, your passion, your intelligence, all of it. And I do feel this is community. We're in this together. Spirit brought to my mind, not a direct comparison, but, interesting how when Luigi Mangione, right? I told you it was going to take a curve. Luigi Mangione killed the head of the United Healthcare. What was Brian Thompson, I think. Remember, there was almost an immediate sort of hero status that he reached because of the idea that when it came to healthcare and all of the harm that as a corporate entity that United Healthcare was perceived or in fact had wrecked against so many lives and people who needed healthcare and claims that were denied, all of that. But the point is, so you have this assassination. And you have this outpouring. On the one hand, you have horrible, never should happen, all of that. He's going to trial, but and they're calling for the death penalty. But you also had a huge outcry of people saying, "Listen, yeah, it was wrong, but I understand it to an extent, or I see how it could have happened, or what Mangione's motivation really was." Right? He took that stance. Spirit is saying, interesting how, when it comes to the extreme white nationalist perspective of a Turning Point organization and its leaders, such as someone like a Charlie Kirk, that what we are hearing instead is this almost universal, even among the liberal contingent, this universal condemnation. And by no means am I suggesting that Robinson should be heroic or considered a hero for standing up to fascism. But I think what I'm getting from a spiritual level is there is that says something about where we are in the scheme of things, and certainly where we are in terms of the media coverage and the way that stories are being spun and the way that people's reactions are being deemed either acceptable or not. All right, I'm going to leave that right there, and would be interested in your feedback. All right, now On the heels of this, Spirit said yesterday in my reading that we were going to see, Charlie Kirk was going to certainly by all means be turned into a martyr, right? Martyrdom all over the place. And in fact, we know that's what's going to happen. But what we are also seeing and hearing now is, it's as if the pardoned Jan Sixers and the Proud Boys have been waiting and looking for their next cause, because now that their boy is in the White House again, and the Stephen Millers of the world are large and in charge. They've been sort of hanging out there, hanging loose. We were hearing and feeling many people have said that if necessary, outside of the National Guard and using the militarizing and going into the cities, that the pardoned Jan Sixers would be sort of his Trump's private militia. That has certainly been talked about, but we haven't really heard a lot of voices, right? So now we've got, in response to Charlie Kirk's assassination, I'm hearing a lot of, and I'm intuiting as well, a lot of like this revving up, engines revving up among the Jan Sixers, especially those who were pardoned. Many of those have also already been rearrested on other charges, but that's another story for another day. But they have now found their cause, or found another cause, right? Something that they can latch on to, coalesce nationally, and start to get out there again. So I've got, talking about a tipping point. Everything in this reading, you all, Spirit said it's a tipping point. I feel like I'm getting the Charlie Kirk assassination was a tipping point for the Jan Sixers, that whole milieu, to now have another face, another thing. The face used to be Trump in the 2020 elections. Now that face is Charlie Kirk, for them to rev up, which is another reason why I feel like Spirit is saying there's got to be a different response to this that is beyond political leadership, that is beyond what could happen, from political leaders. This has got to be something. And that, by the way, I just felt like a little tickle on my neck. That's why, what's this name? Who's this guy out of Texas? Tarico or something? You know who I'm talking about. Please put it in the comments. And I know you will. Tarico, I'm talking about the guy who's running for Senate in Texas, right? Because he's been Democrat, but he's been charming people in large part because he speaks that MAGA language, right? He's been with Joe Rogan. I think he's come out of seminary school, if I'm not mistaken. So he talks that Christian talk. He speaks their lingo, but he's been, he is a Democrat, and he's been putting his spin on it. I wonder, going back to two things. One, January Sixers and the Proud Boys. Are we going to see an uptick in their actual movements, not just rhetoric, but their actual movements as a result of the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Are we going to see Ten of Swords at the bottom of the deck? What's interesting about that, you all, I'm getting from Spirit almost like people, they might want to do it. They might want to, this has become another, there's a cause célèbre, right? But Ten of Swords almost feels like at this point in time, people are not really going to want to jump on board with that. Like, they're not going to do a whole bunch of recruitment, certainly not on a large scale. Proud Boys and the Queen of Cups comes. There's a woman who's going to emerge from this, and I almost feel like she's conservative, and she may even be faith-centered. I'm not sure, but there's some energy here where, as they try, and there's the Hermit that's going to say no. This attempt to further isolate and increase the polarization among people is not going to be met well. This is not their time. This meaning the Jan Sixers and the Proud Boys, etc. This is not their time. They're going to try and do it. We will hear more from them because, again, they've just been looking for something to jump out and go, aha, here's, watch us do our thing again. But it's almost as if Spirit is saying that time has moved on, that even in its most radical and extreme forms, that is why remember, thank you, Spirit, so much of that momentum was around patriotism. Who's a genuine patriot and who's willing to do what to demonstrate their patriotism? This is not about patriotism. This in large part, this extremist movement, this radicalized white supremacist movement, fascist movement, is very tied to faith. Faith in the ideal of what they consider America being them. Are the two parallel in some ways, patriotism and this radical idea and notion of faith, God and country sort of thing? Yeah, they are parallel, but the approach to it is a little different. And I don't think that people are not ready to go and do exactly the same way that the Proud Boys, etc., have done. They're not ready to, put on a moose head and fur and like that's not their deal. So that's it for the Proud Boys. We're going to see more. We're going to hear more. There will be that contingent, but the ability to just multiply and increase among the MAGA faithful, there's more of a pull right now in the church aspect of that, right? In the faith aspect of that. So having said all of that, now I want to look at the main thing that I felt Spirit was pulling me to today, you all, and that is, are we going to see some sort of emerging, I want to say civil rights, only because I just don't have another term for it. But I know that when we say the civil rights movement, of course, so many of us go back to rights for Black people in America, African American people in America, voting rights, housing rights, educational rights, etc. But we also know that under this current regime, it's everybody. It's every immigrant, every race, every national origin or nation of origin. It is Black, of course, always has been. So always part of that. But it is women. It is the poor. There are farmers. I read a story yesterday where there's this whole contingent of farmers. I can't remember. I think it was Nebraska, who are like truly on the verge of bankruptcy due to the tariffs, and just trying to figure out what in the heck are we going to do. So this is everybody. This really is, if you're not rich, you're in that number of who and what is being attacked, right? Therefore, among that number are the Christian faithful, but the liberal Christian faithful as well. And I want to look and ask Spirit, are we going to see a movement emerge out of this to counteract the Christian nationalist extremists, fascists, racists? Are we going to see the church begin to take a stand? And I'm using that sort of as an umbrella term, all right? All faiths. Are we going to see a rising up? I have the Six of Wands at the bottom of the deck after I shuffled. So that is a growing sentiment. Six of Wands, sometimes they call it a card of victory. But in the six number, it is a victory that has not yet been won, clearly. That is gathering steam, that is gathering momentum, and Spirit is saying it's going to take a lot of effort. It will take that gathering. Spirit, a new movement being birthed specifically out of the church. I have a Four of Cups, that disillusionment. It's interesting. I want to clarify that before I speak on it. Four of Cups. And the Spirit's doubling down on the fours. Fours being foundational. Four of Cups and Four of Wands. Perfect. Thank you, Spirit. I get it. These two cards coming together says there is truly a crisis of faith. And I even had that in my mind before I taped. Like a crisis of faith among the Christian faithful. Because even those who despise all of this vitriol and hatred, and who are not fascist, who are not white supremacists, who are not on board with all of this, but are church going, church loving, God fearing folk, there is a fear of a backlash. Like they're disappointed in how they what they see is their fellow believers, fellow saints in the faith, right? They're disappointed in seeing what direction they've gone in. And the Four of Wands says what they want most is to coalesce, and to bring back the faithful. I just heard, what is that word you used to always do it, going back to my Christian days a long time ago, uh revival, like almost like a revival, where before they would be ready to mount a movement nationally that would embrace all, they are primarily concerned, Christian faithful liberal are concerned with bringing a sort of revival of their own, who they see as having gone too far off the rails. Does that make sense? Not that they think they can reconvert the MAGA cult, but that there is a sense that Four of Cups says, man, how did we lose them? How did they go so far off into an area of hatred? All right, so that's the first thing. They're going to want to get back in touch with their own spirit. Will this grow into a civil rights movement of some sort? Will it take that? I have the Knight of Swords movement in dialogue, and I like even that these swords are sort of crossed, because there's a lot of fear. Oh my gosh, there's a lot of fear. Like, duh, newsflash, right? We knew that. But fear meaning, even when your conviction is so strong, there's almost a choked off, like they just showed me, like wanting to say the words and just not stopping themselves before they can, because they don't want the attacks. Will church leaders band together and begin to do this? I have the Fool. I knew it was coming, you all. Thank you so much, Spirit. There's the Fool. I think there's something, and again, we may not call it civil rights movement. It probably won't. Like everything is new. We're in totally different territory. But the premise of what Spirit put in my gut this morning was that the answer to this and the countermeasures to this, and what begins to get us through to the other side. Nothing lasts forever, and this current hell that we're being put through will not last forever. I had a conversation with a family member yesterday, and I said, I remember when we all thought that the era of Obama, being elected, that meant we had truly rounded a corner and had begun this new, era as a society. And then boom, who would think that we were here today, right? So that era, did not last. This era will not last either. We are coming into something more and something better. But the Fool also, remember you all, if you're not familiar with tarot, the Fool very often represents something that has never been done before. It is ruled by Uranus. So it is a rebellious energy, but it can be also an energy that is willing to take a risk. It is not about the tried and true Republican, Democrat, blah, blah, blah. It's more. The typical Christian versus the radicalized Christian extremist, it's something more that comes out of that. So the Fool feels good. It actually feels good. And we have the Seven of Cups. How on earth do we do it? The desire is there. But how on earth do we do it? Seven of Cups says there's so many options. And how do we get that messaging out there that doesn't further polarize people and brings people together? But I think there is something it's almost like it has to. It's almost like we're out of options. Well, I'm not going to claim that. Sorry, Spirit. It's almost like, fine. Congress hasn't done what it needed to do. SCOTUS certainly has not done what it needed to do. Political leaders, Schumer and Jeffries, question mark, question mark, question mark around them. The Jasmine Crockett's of the world, the AOCs of the world, the Bernie Sanders of the world, doing their part, the Gavin Newsoms, and etc. The list goes on, doing their part individually and somewhat becoming a collective in that political voice. But it is the people, and Spirit has been saying that for a long time. It is the people, astrologically, even Pluto in Aquarius. It is the people who ultimately will dictate this change. Looking at Nepal, not saying same deal, but I think the idea of and not just the idea, the realization of what is possible when the people truly decide, hey, this is what's going to happen. All right. I have an 8 of Swords, going back to the issue of the Christian, the more liberal, more disturbed Christians who are just do not believe that this is God-like behavior that's coming from this administration, and even organizations that are promoting hatred and promoting separatism and all of the things, right? All of the isms. There's a fear, but we have the 8 of Pentacles, and that's work getting done. That is rolling up your sleeves and simply saying, how do we do it? We know this is not going to be easy. We know this is not going to be a slam dunk. I'm also noticing I'm not pulling a lot of major arcana right now, you all, which, again, for those of you not familiar with tarot, when you pull major arcana, like we did around Robinson earlier in this reading, right? That's like done energy, where Spirit says done. This is about to happen. I'm not, see how the energy is a little more tentative here. I'm not pulling the majors. So this really feels like that Fool. I'm going to stand on it. That the message that I was getting is there's going to be a pull, and there is certainly a need for those who are in the faith communities that object to where we're headed and what's being done, that voice, in addition to any political power and the voices that are emerging, those voices need to be heard and organized, and perhaps then going together, right? As we saw in the civil rights movement, politics and culture can result in change, and I think that's going to happen. But man, is it going to be it's a tough uphill climb, but I do think there's some momentum going in that direction. All right, you all. I am about to travel again. Family's been all good, like family things, anniversaries, and like all good things for which I'm grateful. But I am about to get on the road again tomorrow. I will check in with you though. Long as I got some Wi-Fi, you will see my face. I will be in touch with you real soon. You might not see a video from me on Sunday because I will still be traveling then. But in the meantime, you know what we do on this channel. Chin up, shoulders back, and we breathe, right? We breathe collectively. We breathe and support one another. Thank you so much for your empathy. Thank you so much that the respect that you show me on the channel. Please remember to hit that like and subscribe button. Even if you don't comment, just hitting that like button will help my videos grow. I feel like my content, I know that my intentions are good when I come and I bring you this content, and I feel like there is a voice and a need for it. Otherwise, I wouldn't continue to do it. So I appreciate everything. And my members, most especially, thank you so very much for your support. It really motivates and inspires me more than I can even tell you. All right. So while I'm doing all of this, let me bring it up. Right. All right. You all stay safe out there, and I'll check in again with you real soon. Bye.